Great. Who do we have next?
Well, it's somebody who's taking something which is interesting, because when we think of this new world of crowdsourcing, we think of technology, and we think of maybe Silicon Valley. When in fact, actually we can look to the valleys of the times past and our own ecosystem, because trees are apparently, and we'll find out more information, I think, the best technology to halt global warming. And that's something I am actually aware of. So we can look to the ecosystem as well as the Silicon Valley. So really looking forward to this one. Thank you.
Marie, thank you for coming.
Yes.
I'm really passionate about this because, think about you're walking in the city and you don't see any trees. We really take trees for granted. So really you have an amazing project that you're working on. Really amazed that you're here. Thanks for coming.
Thank you very much. Yes, good morning. Can I invite you just to stand up for a second, just to stretch, because I know you've been sitting for a long time. I think just after this is a break, lunch break or... Okay. So, I was here last year, and maybe some of you are already in the room, and actually the title of my presentation today is the one from last year, so this year is going to be a little different, but it obviously is relating to the same. Last year I talked about the new currency, trees being the new currency. This year I'm going to focus a little more on the Paris Agreement, following up on what Andy said earlier this morning. And actually for this, I have a very bad news and I have a very good news. So if you're curious, bear with me for 15 minutes. You can stay. You can continue to stand if you prefer. So I want to start with a short 2-minute video. And actually, it's also interactive. You've got an opportunity to respond 3 questions. So if you want, while people watch the video in production, you can fire off the first question.
Poverty, sustainable food production, fresh water scarcity, climate change. These are major challenges facing our species today. Our forests can play a key role in solving these problems. Yet when we need them most, the forests of the world are falling. Deforestation has accelerated. 50% of our rainforests were lost in the last 60 years alone. Deforestation drives climate change, degrading land, choking rivers, and polluting the atmosphere. Forests stabilize the climate and cool the air. They prevent erosion and regulate the water cycle. They generate moisture, chemicals, and microorganisms that actually create clouds. In Southeast Asia, reforestation was used to create a 5,000-acre orangutan reserve. 50% of the people were jobless. The land was a biological desert. Combining agriculture and forestry, a replicable system was created. It was designed to yield early food and income for the local people, reduce growing expenditures, and speed up ecosystem regeneration. 3 years later, the results were in. Cloud cover up 11.5%, rainfall up 25%, 3,000 people now making a sustainable income. Reforestation makes a difference. 1 acre of permaculture-designed food forest can sustainably support 10 people. Wheat, less than 5. And oil, water, and pesticides are used in wheat production. There are 39 million square kilometers of degraded farmland in the world today. Reforesting just over half using permaculture techniques would create an additional 2% cloud cover over our precious planet Earth. Currently, global warming is adding 1.6 watts of heat per square meter of land. If that square meter is covered by a cloud, up to 80 watts of the sun's energy is reflected back into space. A 2% increase in cloud cover could halt global warming in its tracks, long enough to develop technologies needed for a sustainable future for us all. Join us and be part of making it happen. weforest.com, or hashtag us on Twitter with #WeForest.
So I want to speak a little bit about the Paris Agreement. And we can summarize it. I'm not sure. Oh, yeah, this is the question. I'm not sure about, if you see all the questions here, sorry, all the topics. The summary is we need to limit the temperature increase to 1.5 degrees. It's the first universal climate agreement. So as Andy said this morning, this is a major milestone, and we're very happy that 193 countries signed it and also are ratifying it now. And it was all confirmed during COP22 in Marrakesh last week. It is going to be helping poorer nations. There is a major commitment for funding to help the countries. And also, there is an obligation for publishing greenhouse gas emission targets. And also, the objective would be to become carbon neutral, possibly by 2050. So that's what's written. That's what we agreed to, and it's already a major step forward. When I spoke to Al Gore in December 2015, just after COP in Paris, I said, "Are you happy about the 2 degrees?" He said, "Well, that's all we could hope for, and that's already a major achievement." So yes, we have to celebrate what we have. But here comes the bad news. Actually, 2 degrees is far too high, and during COP21, we didn't talk too much about it because we wanted to celebrate, but you've been hearing since then that everybody agrees, all the NGOs, all the experts, all the scientists, the European Commission, everybody's saying it is too high. It's far too high. And here are some numbers. And actually, I don't know if you've already answered some of the questions here. We already are observing that we are at 1.2 degrees in excess to where we were in the 90s. So we're already almost there. The bad news is coming now. It's actually, and I don't want to downplay all the good things that are happening. We heard about the energy transition. We know all of that. But scientists are saying, if we stopped emissions today, like literally stopped emissions or went to just renewables today, we would still hit the wall. So that's really bad news, and it discourages all of us to act, right? That's pretty bad. And why is that? Because everything is already in the oceans. The emissions that are coming out now in the atmosphere were actually captured 30 years ago and are stored in the oceans. That's why they become more acidic. So it's already happening. So that means we just have to do more. Much more and much faster. We got to do all the energy transition and much more. And the good news is coming. Trees are the best technology to halt global warming. Trees are the best carbon sink there is. There's a lot of people working on carbon capture and storage, for example. That's a great idea, but actually, why don't we just use trees? Because that's what they've been doing for many years and doing it well. And actually, trees are not just a carbon sink, as you know. They have a lot of other functions. We talked about the circular economy. Well, obviously, trees are a circular economy. That's the best example. So 50% of this floor is carbon. So if you build houses with wood, you capture carbon. That's what we want people to do. We want everything to be in wood, actually, and we want to plant more trees. And as I said before, the carbon is already absorbed by the oceans. 25% of the emissions are in the oceans, and 25% must be absorbed by the ecosystems, including, obviously, forests. And so that's why trees have been called the negative emission technologies. That's what Oxford calls them. And besides capturing carbon, forests also cool the planet. So it's not just because they remove carbon out of the atmosphere, but also they are a water cycle regulator and they cool the planet. If you have a tree in the city, you will measure that the temperature is lower. If you had trees in California, we talked about the drought, or in Sao Paulo, where you have huge droughts for years, if you had trees along the coast, it would pull the water and the humidity from the ocean onto the land and bring water back. That's what trees do, and we seem to forget that. The there's the Paris Agreement and there's the New York Declaration on Forests, which was done in September 2014, where the United Nations and many companies and states have committed to restoring our planet. And actually, this New York Declaration on forests says we need 350 million hectares additional forest now in order to stay under the 2 degrees. And we now know 2 degrees is too high, but that's on top of all the energy transitions that we're doing. And so you're thinking, what is 350 million hectares? Well, that is the surface of India. And it's doable because it's just a fraction of all the land that is destroyed, that is damaged, that is useless. So we can do it. There is plenty of land. We just have to restore the planet. We have to stop cutting the forest, like the primary forest. We can continue to cut trees for energy if they're planted for that, but we cannot continue to destroy the primary forests that we have in those regions because they are the lungs, they are the cooling pump of the planet. So we got to stop deforestation, and you have a role to play as a consumer in this, and we have to accelerate restoration. And so just translating 350 million hectares into something everybody understands, well, we calculated that it is around 175 billion trees, which is, if you divide by the 7 billion people that live on this planet of 7.5 today, then it is 24 trees per person, including your children and your grandparents, everybody. So 24 trees per person is needed now in order to resolve the problem. And so the trees are not just a cooling system, they do all of this as well. They provide, for clean air, for water quality, they alleviate poverty because they provide jobs where we plant them, they provide for food, they restore the soil so then other crops can grow. They are miracles. And somebody talks, I think, about the Sustainable Development Goals. Sorry for the slide, it's a little odd. But actually, when you plant trees the way we do it in the South, you tick all of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, all of them. I mean, what else do you want? And so that's We Forest. We plant in those countries. Those are the countries where the need is big. And also, it doesn't make sense to plant here for us in the northern countries because for the climate, it's not the best solution. And if you're interested, I can send you some scientific studies. The trees need to be planted to cool the planet in the tropical countries. And so, yes, we talked about the trees being a currency. We're working with over 180 brands right now, but that's peanuts compared to what's needed. We're working with those companies to plant trees. So why do they start planting trees with us? I'm running almost out of time. Well, some do marketing campaigns, some do CSR, some just do donations, some celebrate their anniversary with trees. The sky is the limit. If you are really committed to restoring the planet, your company will find a way to use the trees to communicate to your employees, to your customers, and grow, because we have brands that plant trees for every product sold, and their sales grow by 25%. So it doesn't have to be philanthropic. It can be business. We're happy if companies make business with trees as long as we plant trees. And we know that we plant them well, and we take care of them, because we work with the best universities and scientists to ensure and provide guarantees for the trees that we plant. So the question here for all of you, and this is the last question I think we can ask the public, is what can you do? Because it's nice to sit here and see this and go home and say, oh, this was interesting. Well, it doesn't make any difference. It just won't. What makes a difference is that you use, for example, the ecosias of this world instead of Google, because it will plant trees every time you search. You buy products from the brands that do plant trees, and there's many of them. I could name Yves Rocher, I could name Brabantia, I could name Nike or other companies. So you need to look for that. And you need to ask your politicians to act. You need to ask your brands to act. You need to reduce your meat consumption. Somebody talks about this morning. There's so many things we need to do. So this is the crowd. This is the power of the crowd. And we need to make it happen now. Especially if you guys have children. Maybe some of you are still too young to have children. But it won't make a difference too much to us, because the trees, yes, have to grow. So the trees we plant today won't make too much of a difference for us here, but it will make a huge difference to our children. So that's my favorite slide, especially currently. I think it's nice to remember that some people care. And so I want to leave you with this last slide, with obviously Wangari Maathai and Barack Obama in the early days. That's the message that I want you to take home.
Thank you very, very much. And I can see, like, from a people, reducing meat consumption is like the top favorite here.
Yes.
So yes, and that's the least you can do, you know. And there's many more that you can do.
Yeah.
So
It used to be like stop printing, right?
stop printing. Yeah.
That's nice. It doesn't make a big difference.
Yeah.
It helps, but it doesn't too much. There's many more things we can do.
Great.
Thank
You'll
you.
be here for panels,
Yes.
so we'll have more questions
Yeah.
for you. Thank you for coming. Really great work.